Hello, I'm Ryan Bohl, Middle East and North Africa analyst at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by Worldview, RANE's premier digital publication for objective geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Sign up for our free newsletter at worldview.stratfor.com.
You're listening to RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast. I'm Emily Donahue. In June 2020, Indian and Chinese troops literally came to blows over a long-disputed territory at the border between both countries. The event highlighted China's determination to permanently alter the balance of power along the border. But what's happening now? Here with answers is Ekta Raghuwanshi, South Asia analyst with RANE. Hi, Ekta.
Hello, Emily.
Can you give me a little detail of why this land is actually in dispute?
Sure. So the border dispute between India and China is a historical one. The border has never been resolved. It has not been demarcated. There is no official border between India and China. It is a very big border. It's a 2,100-mile long border. The border was demarcated by the Britishers after India got independence or during that time. There are many disagreements between both the sides. China claims many strategic regions on the Ladakh in the eastern side, on the Ladakh Plateau, one known as the Siachen Glacier. That's a very strategic point for both the countries in the Himalayas. China claims some of the regions near the Bhutan, India, and China Tri Junction border area. And there is the whole state of Arunachal Pradesh in the east that China claims is south, a part of a Tibet, or it calls it South Tibet. So there are these issues which have not been resolved in all of the history of both the countries. In 1962, we know there was a border dispute, and that led to a war in which China most definitely won. During that, there was a temporary border or a temporary line that was demarcated, which is now known as the line of actual control. And that has mostly remained the status quo for both the countries since 1962.
So, Ekta, what is the status of this India-China standoff?
In 2020, what we saw was a conflict between the Indian and the Chinese soldiers where they came face to face, which resulted into casualties for the first time in a very long time. Since 2020, India and China both have been engaged in a standoff on the border, and there has been very minimal de escalation of the border conflict. There were like 4 to 5 friction points where soldiers or troops were face to with each other, and we have seen some form of disengagement from at least 3 out of the 4 major friction points. We have seen at least 14 commander level talks to talk about resolution of the current standoff, which has not completely been positive. The recent talks were in January, which essentially failed because both the sides could not agree on troop disengagement from one of the friction points. So currently we have a standoff in the Ladakh region, and of course claims of territories on the other parts of the border.
Are there any other countries in the region that are affected by this disagreement?
Just because of the geography, Bhutan is one of the smaller countries, a very small South Asian nation that is directly affected by it. It is also affected because China also claims certain Bhutanese territories as its own. And we have seen, at least in the past few years, there has been a lot of construction, at least civil infrastructure, or we could also say civil or military dual use infrastructure by the Chinese side even into the Bhutanese territory. Bhutan being a very, very small country, and it's also very closely allied to India. We can essentially say Bhutan's foreign affairs are India's responsibility for a larger matter like that. Uh, so Bhutan is one of the countries which is very, very affected by the whole dynamic in India-China.
What are the chances of a quick or even future de-escalation here?
This is an open-ended question now, but I would like to say is the nature of the conflict has completely changed since 2020. Before 2020, it was rather peaceful. It was rather diplomatic. They were trying to at least work there was a proper status quo. But after 2020, the posturization of both the countries and territorial claims have the perception, the sovereignty aspect of it, and the ultranationalism in both the countries have changed the nature of this conflict. And at least many analysts like me do not see a very quick de-escalation of the conflict. This can also be backed by the evidences of militarization and heavy infrastructure building that we see on both sides of the LAC. The Chinese, as we know, have been constructing feeder roads, infrastructure projects of roads, railways near the LAC airports for feeding their military establishment, conducting exercises on high altitude regions and things like those. Similarly, on the Indian side, we are seeing heavy military reorganization. There are troops, at least 50 to 60,000 troops that have been stationed across the LAC, mostly in the Ladakh region. So, at least the movement of the troops and the attention on the India China border, which was followed after 2020, violent 2020 conflict, I would say, I do not see a quick de escalation of the conflict. We could, however, see some form of disengagement of troops from certain standpoints, but it can also very well go result into another violent conflict, not to a larger scale, but at least little skirmishes over some points.
Ekta Raghuwanshi is RANE South Asia analyst. Thank you, Ekta.
Thank you, Emily.
China's geopolitical relations with its neighbors are a driving force for geopolitical developments and business risk. You can stay ahead of the news about China with RANE Worldview. Try out a sample subscription. It's just $1 for 4 weeks. Subscribe at stratfor.com. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.